Okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the January 28th meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee. And I guess first things first, roll call. Mr. Peterson, you're sitting in for Mr. Steele?
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Okay. Mr. Flynn?
Patrick Flynn.
And the mayor is joining us, and then Ms. Heil is here.
Yes.
And then I'm Jennifer Witt, sitting in for Joel St. Aubin as chair. So with that, Craig, could you go ahead and give us the public involvement announcement, please?
All AMATS meetings are public meetings, and the public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff or consultant, and then the committee will be given a chance to discuss the matter, and then at that point, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. So approval of the agenda. We have 2 sets of minutes and 1 action item. Is there any changes to the agenda proposed by the committee? Move to approve.
Second.
Any opposition to approval? Okay, moved and approved. Moved by Ms. Heil, seconded by Mr. Peterson. So moving on to item number 4, we have 2 sets of minutes. So we'll take the November 19th ones, 2015. And by the way, thank you, staff, for being so prompt with the minutes. Are there any comments, questions, or modifications to the November 19th minutes?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Heil,
I'll second that motion.
seconded by Mr. Peterson. Any objections to adopting the November 19th, 2015 minutes?
Okay, a couple. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I hadn't had a chance to look at these. I didn't see them on the website earlier.
But would you like to hold off until the following meeting to approve them?
I would, because I already spotted a typo and put something that I want to.
Okay, well, let's do that.
So,
I moved.
I'm sorry, I usually try to review these ahead of time. I just didn't see them on the website. I must have thought I visited too early or something.
Okay, so withdrawn for approval. Do we need to withdraw the second too?
Usually you ask for the concurrence of the second.
Concurrence of the second, Mr. Peterson. Is it okay to hold off until the next meeting, please?
Sure.
Okay, what about the December, same with the December one?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at those.
Okay, if it's not a problem for the staff, we'll hold off on both sets of minutes until the next meeting for approval. Thank you.
Appreciate your indulgence, Madam Chair.
Hey, that was easy. Okay, item number 5, action item, is the congestion management process update and status of the system report. Ooh, Mr. Mayor,
Madam Chair,
welcome.
thank you very much.
We're just getting, we deferred approval of the minutes, and we're getting into our 1 action item. And Teresa Brewer is going to be giving us a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On December 3rd, the Technical Advisory Committee approved both documents that are before you today, the status of the system report and the congestion management process. And they went through a series of several work sessions and approval processes for each chapter of these various documents. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background history on those. We'll start off today with the congestion management, or the status of the system report, I'm sorry. Because that document feeds into the congestion management process. And what the status of the system report does is it kind of tells us what's going on with the system today for all modes, be it freight, be it road, be it pedestrian, and it kind of shows us where we're at on various corridors. And we usually have always studied 9 corridors and 21 intersections and looked at their level of service, and then also their level of mobility is a new performance measure that we added this year, which basically is a volume over capacity ratio with 4 classifications of tolerable, moderate, serious, and severe. So here's some of the comparisons of the earlier intersections so that you could look at their LOS. We have 21 intersections. Of those, 14 improved, 5 were the same, and 2 were worse. And the 2 that were worse were Spenard and I believe Airport and Fifth Avenue. Do need to be very careful with some of these statistics, as we need to have further analysis and take a look at a strategic plan, primarily because when we collected this data, we had a delay in procurement. We usually collect in spring. The data was collected in fall of September, October, and November. So conditions were slightly different. So I do want to make you aware of that. But just to give you an idea of where some of the improvements are, sometimes it can be due to project improvements, road improvements that have recently happened.
Excuse me, may I ask a question, going back to there? I have noticed this before, but you had level of service G and H as well as F. I thought F used to be the worst.
Yes. This is based, I think, on the, there's two different mathematical equations that you can use, and I believe this is that secondary one. It might be the, I want to say like National Highway System Performance Measure. It's that algorithm they use with Synchro, which is our traffic signalized intersection.
I noticed the same thing, Teresa, when I was going through the report, and it's not defined in table 2.1.
Okay,
So,
so we need to update that then.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's A through F, and all of a sudden,
So you get G.
we get G. That's kind of-
Yeah.
it-
Yeah, because you really can't go, I mean, G is probably just as bad as
212
F,
is the table.
right?
Yeah, on page 2-12, table 2.1 is,
Okay, let me write that down. Page, and a preface, we do realize there are some edits that required, I found counties instead of boroughs, and then some missing periods, and a reference to LOS twice where one should have been LOM level mobility, so.
In the language that's on the bottom of, looks like it's 218 and 219, talks about how so the report assumes for purposes of comparison that LOS F, G, and H in the 09 LOS evaluation are all equivalent to LOS F in the 2013 analysis.
Oh, okay,
So I don't know where they came from, but
so it was from the earlier.
different. Yeah, it says in 2010, Synchro was used to evaluate intersection LOS and used a
Yeah,
range
that's
between A and H. And they're assuming that those F, G, and H all are the equivalent of
F.
F in 2015.
Perhaps we should.
So it's like an F minus.
F minus.
Well, and all the, there's only 2 instances where we have G and H, or 3 instances where we have G and H's, and they're all now D's and E's.
So it got better.
Right.
So, but it's just a little,
It's a little confusing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so perhaps we should take that text and insert it into the document rather than a footnote.
well, it
It's
just,
in the document.
it's in the document, but it needs to be defined in the table
Okay,
on page 212.
Yeah.
okay.
And thanks, Craig, because that does explain the Synchro was used in 2010, and we're comparing different years of data.
And largely, the congestion, or the status of the system report is largely to let us look at historical trends, compare the data, see what's happening with the system so that we can make recommendations for the future MTP and for congestion management strategies. So this is a very elemental document to those other planning documents. So it just gives us a really good idea of what's happening, and I just brought up a couple of different intersections just so that you could see some travel times. Obviously, we collect travel times with the caveat that we were unable to collect in spring and we had to collect in the fall to help us understand what's going on with the system with all modes. And equally safety. I didn't highlight safety, but we also look at accidents. And accidents are hovering around 7,100 a year. But we have an increase in vehicle miles traveled. So we're actually doing pretty good safety-wise.
Question, Madam Chair. So is there any indication that there's a difference in vehicle traffic in the spring than there is in the fall?
There may be some differences with school and with tourism ticking up. And we recognize that, and unfortunately, due to delay in procurement process, we were unable to further delay our project, so we
So
had to collect.
It's anecdotally, which would be higher then?
I would personally think probably spring, but I can't honestly, know that until we went out and took the traffic counts.
Okay, in spring, when you say spring, would there be snow on the ground spring or
Sometimes there is.
in fall, no?
Fall, we might have snow. They do try when we are collecting travel times through our traffic department, and thanks to Kim Carpenter and her group, they do try to collect it before the snow flies so that we can try to have a better estimation. But there are seasonal differences for sure.
And if I may add to that, from a DOT perspective, Mayor, we have a number of permanent traffic counts in the city that we monitor they're reported on monthly, and so we use that to develop our average annual daily traffic on each facility, but we do have information about seasonal peaks at each of those locations. For example, there's the concrete slab on Minnesota is a permanent, it's actually a weigh in motion station. But there is that data available that shows the seasonal fluctuations within the city on some of the major routes, Tudor Road, Minnesota.
With the seasonal fluctuations, is there spring, fall distinction?
There would be, yes. It would be reported by day and by month. And so if you're interested in a follow-up conversation about some of the data that we have.
Yeah, just to contextualize this distinction here. So-
Right, because people will start getting ready for fishing camp, or, people are coming up, and you'll have more tourist uptick, so.
I mean, is traffic
generally-
10% heavier, this sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
the
it's okay.
exact.
I was just
this one.
thinking aloud.
Oh, no worries.
Which is-
And forgive me, I also want to thank co-project manager Vivian Underwood, and then also Erin Young and Naylor from DOT. They were integral to this effort, and along with our technical advisory committee members. The next document that you have before you is a congestion management process. And the last time that the AMATS seriously worked on that document was in 1994. So the feds, with the new MAP 21 Moving Ahead with Progress Act, established that we need to have performance measures, and we need to have a process for congestion management and how we're going to identify strategies and performance measures. So that's largely what that document does, is it establishes performance measures, tells us what kind of data collection needs we have, and then it's a big input into the MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and the TIP program. And here are some of the tasks that folks worked on, was to make sure that we were compliant with all federal mandates and regulations. We had a public participation process to engage regional stakeholders within the CMP update. And then also, Chapter 5 of this document basically is a summary of the congestion management process. Because once we can identify gaps in the system where congestion is a problem, then we can develop some strategies and a process to work on those. And then we, of course, developed a data management plan. And there is an 8-step process that our agency followed and the Technical Advisory Committee followed in order to do the congestion management process. And if you want more information on that, I'm happy to provide that for you. But pretty much you define the network, which is Chapter 2, and I do have maps of that, and then start analyzing and figuring out a way to monitor congestion. The TAC originally started with about 16 performance measures from the earlier Metropolitan Plan update. They reviewed 33, and of those, they chose 22. And they broke those out into Tier 1 and Tier 2 performance measures. Tier 1 being 13 performance measures that we can easily get data for, we can monitor, we can collect, such as travel times, vehicle miles traveled, vehicle hours traveled. Tier 2 performance measures are additional measures that we would like to collect data for in the future. And if the technology and resources become available, such as a truck reliability index, then we can start taking a look at those.
But there's no commitment in the document, correct, that says we have to collect any of that data?
No, there is no commitment. But we do have an overarching data management plan as part of that, so that we can look at and we can see, okay, what resources are available, what agencies potentially have that data, and how could we manage it and meet some of these performance measures. So I just briefly put out performance measures just to quickly show you some of the things that the Technical Advisory Committee was looking at. And all of these are associated or consistent with earlier planning documents, such as the status of the system and the 2035 MTP. And I just put up a sample of because you don't have it in your packet as part of a chapter 2, they're separate files of the CMP network, which is the TSNA area for AMATS. And it will also have bus routes, sidewalks, bus stops, along with the road system network. So that these are just 2 of them, and there's probably 10 of them. So here were the performance measures that were involved in the CMP update, and pretty much the tier 1 are to your left and your tier 2 on what was determined to be important congestion measures and mitigation strategies to look at for use in projects. And so as part of the process in identifying these strategies, Cambridge Systematics, who performed this work for us, identified potential road projects, also potential non-motorized road projects and bus projects. Some of those could include transit-oriented development, these various road projects like 36 Seward, clearly anything along Tudor Corridor. Here's some public service, expand the headways to 15-30 minutes to help relieve congestion. And some non-motorized bicycle lanes. And then also some ITS projects were included in that, signalized retiming, that type of thing. So some of the results of this plan is the Technical Advisory Committee developed some strategies to reduce congestion. We have a toolbox. From that toolbox, AMATS, the plan recommends that we have a form that we give to project sponsors, have them fill out and tell us how they're going to mitigate congestion problems. And so that is also part of the document. So that would help us identify and then mitigate potential congestion. Utilize some performance-based processes. We need to track and monitor the performance because MAP 21, along with the state, will be setting targets for us. So what are things that we can easily gather through data collection and we can help meet some of these future performance targets? Of course, safety, security, mobility, recurring and non-recurring congestion are items we need to address. Non-recurring being like accidents, major things that shut a freeway down or a throwaway down. That doesn't usually happen. Maybe a big event, President Obama coming to town. And then the TAC incorporated different types of strategies to include different things that could work for different projects, because if you have just one option, it's not going to fit all your projects. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was particularly interested in some of the aspects of the transit options. And one of the things I took note on page 3-43, discussing anchor rides, that passenger trips have been diminishing.
Correct. They're down from the 4 million.
What's that?
Slightly. They're down from the 4 million slightly.
Yeah. And of course, demographically, the senior population in Anchorage is growing, so that seems somewhat counterintuitive. Now, where I happen to sit, I get complaints from neighbors about crappy service, which indicates to me that people are seeking alternatives, and yet there's no discussion of what those alternatives might be. Now, I see, for example, the Alaska Native Medical Center has its own transit service now. I don't believe they used to. And so some discussion as to where that traffic is going is lacking in this report. Is it actually really going away, or is it finding another route?
It could be that people are getting rides from friends, a variety of things. This was the data that we received from our transit department and the national transit data. So they provide us with the revenue hours and encapsulate that data. And so some of those questions may be better addressed to those individuals, but in our toolbox of strategies, we can look at travel options and various programs to reach out and help individuals. And we're recommending as one of our strategies to incorporate 15 and 30-minute headways. And there may be other ways of boosting transit ridership. I know Jamie Acton is working on a program,
Well, that's not transit, that's this is
paratransit van pool, but it falls under the aegis of public transit. And so those were the statistics and data that we got from them, but I am happy to follow up on that question, kind of figure out maybe there's something, because we can clearly edit this document. We own it, so there may be something that we can add to it and bring back to the TAC.
I think that needs further investigation, because something is happening there, and I don't believe we're seeing a loss in overall ridership. I just think that the rider system that we're providing is not meeting customer demand,
And that may be
and they're going somewhere else.
true, and I'm sorry, I wouldn't know that. I know that when fuel costs drive down, people have a tendency not to take transit, but there may be a variety of other reasons.
Was that page? It was 343.
And if I may.
You're on the wrong, what's this I talking about?
343.
You're on the, yeah, that's it, yeah, the bottom.
And then on the next page, though, Mr. Flynn, there's, this may help explain it a little bit, if I may, Teresa.
Yes, please.
There's been a decrease in revenue hours for anchor rides between like 2011 and 2013, which could explain part of it.
Well, that's
There's
my point.
another option too, which is
Yeah.
the cost of fuel has fallen significantly over
Oh,
that
that's
time. And so
true.
when the cost of fuel goes down, people tend to take their own private vehicles more often.
Anchor rides is a pretty, how shall I put it, captive audience. Most of them can't operate their own vehicles, and that's why they use it,
But they could be with folks who can, so.
maybe. The other piece that, and moving ahead to page 446, which is, on ride sharing, and talking about, we've got the same number of, roughly the same number of vehicles the past several years. We dropped one from 11 to 12, but van poolers were dropping. There's no discussion of Valley Mover. How is that affecting that ridership? And I think that's a missing component, particularly since we do discuss in the introduction the co-joining of the Matsu and Anchorage boroughs.
Right, and to be consistent with the earlier status of the system, we followed the parameters of that document, and we're just within the AMATS boundary, but clearly regional connections are important.
Well, we didn't. You started by noting the error of using counties instead of boroughs, and yet we mentioned Anchorage and Matsu.
Right, in terms of population in that introductory
And
statement.
that certainly affects traffic on the system, particularly on the Glen. So, I mean, some discussion of Valley Mover, I think, needs to be part of this, even if we omit it from the statistical analysis specifically as to its effects on share ride and whether we think of a different program or different emphasis of our dollars in the future.
Right, and of course, Valley Mover would relieve congestion within the Anchorage area, so our whole job is to help reduce congestion.
And also, I was just a little disappointed that we didn't have a methodology for following up on carpools that we help form and then we don't know what happens to them.
I know that the contractor, the share ride individual, works on those, and a lot of times, like I was in a formal carpool, but then it went informal. We just met on our own, and I don't know how you track those individuals. I'm not sure how that occurs with the share ride folks and the contractor. It's very difficult, and I think the document does mention the fact that trying to capture those informal carpoolers or van poolers is incredibly difficult.
Well, it seems like it wouldn't be terribly difficult. You collect information from them in order to organize them.
Right, and then you have to have a survey, and you have to have, a lot of money to do a survey. Our household travel survey cost.
Or send an email
Good.
once every 3 months saying, are you still carpooling?
Right, so that would be with the public transit folks and the share ride folks that would need to also get that message. But I think we should definitely take a look at the Valley Mover and see how that, maybe we can incorporate some text. Happy to do that.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
If I could summarize then your concerns or questions, that you would like to see a discussion of Valley Mover and whether, to what extent it may be impacting the ride share or even
The
the
van
van
pool
pool
system.
the van pool system. And then also the, with regards to the
Anchor rides.
anchor rides, to explain what has been happening to, with the decreased service, where those trips, how are they being accommodated? Did I actually, did
Yeah,
I
I mean,
capture that?
I don't, anecdotally, and based on the demographic data, I do not believe there are fewer trips needed. I think there are at least as many, if not more, and so I want to know where they're going.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, or how they're being handled, addressed.
Yeah, I really don't care where they're going, I guess. That's up to them.
Well, they're getting there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then just, the last part was just on the ride sharing, finding a better way to track that data long term.
Three areas.
So in other words, if we're going to be spending money to get people together, we should at least know if they still do it.
And if they don't, why?
Right. And are we wasting our money?
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Any questions from the audience here on status of the system report? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next.
I believe they asked for approval, but do you need it today or do you need it after you had a chance to work on some edits?
We were seeking approval largely because our federal certification from an audit from the feds is being held up pending the final approval of this document.
And yet if it were to wait another month, would it be a terrible?
I don't think it's a huge issue.
Well, when we received the certification last year, they basically said it is remaining open for the completion of the ITS update and the CMP update, and to just let us know when it's done, sort of thing.
Okay.
They didn't say you need to do this in the next 2 months, but sooner the better.
They're not going to take away our birth date or anything if it's another.
You could take away a couple of mine.
All right. Those are birth dates, yeah. Okay. Well, even if we were to delay action on it, would you like to go ahead and get the presentation on the next part, and we can decide what to do with it?
That's fine.
That was
That's
both
it, I
the
think.
status of the system.
Oh, you did it both?
Yeah.
That was everything.
Roll it into one.
Oh, okay, excuse me.
She was being efficient with her time.
Yeah, I was not being close enough. So what is the pleasure of the board? The committee?
Well, I guess it would be helpful to, I mean, as Teresa pointed out, there are already edits she spotted that need to be made. And so we could either make a motion to approve it pending final edits, but might be easier just to let her do those edits and bring it back to us.
I agree.
And let the TAC take one more look at it just to make sure that they are comfortable with whatever edits that we've recommended makes sense to them too.
Okay, so it sounds like 3 areas of comment. I wrote them down. But
How convenient that we have 2 TAC members here.
tracking of the.
Oh, you're off now, sorry.
Yeah. So tracking of the ride share, the carpoolers, what is the methodology to assess its effectiveness? The other one was the effect of people mover on our van pools.
Valley mover.
Excuse me, Valley mover on our carpools as well as van pools. And then what is going on with the anchor rides in terms of what's happening to those trips that are not being documented or covered, and what might be those reasons.
You know, the other thing, if you haven't paid, the projects are listed in these documents. They will get more points in scoring criteria in any new tip that we do because they come from an approved plan at some point. So you might want to relook at all the projects just to see if they really do what you want to do, because they will get additional points in the criteria, scoring criteria in the future. So, I mean, it's one of the things that how stuff interconnects.
Mhm.
It's subtle, but it's it's a few points. It'll differentiate between different projects. If you don't see something in there that should be in there, or if you don't necessarily agree with how it's worded in there, you might want to pay
That's all
attention.
located in the update report, not the,
Yeah.
Right.
I spent more time on the status of the system report, so I guess that means I have another work
You
assignment.
have another month to look at that one.
What's that?
You have another month to look at that one.
Yeah, there we are.
Okay, the recommendation was made. Do we need to take action on it, Craig? If, unless there's any objection from the committee, we will hold this approval until next time with some additional edits or information to come back to the committee. Okay, thank you. With that, moving on, any general information? Says none. Okay, committee comments, going around the room. Mr. Peterson, do you have anything for the good of the order?
Well, I was just a little bit surprised at some of the data there, although when you think about how much the price of fuel has gone down, I suppose more people are going to be driving than taking the bus and public transportation, just because it's cheap, might become cheaper to drive now, or at least they perceive that it's cheaper to drive.
Hey, Mr. Flynn?
Probably said enough.
Mayor? I would just like to make a pitch for, and it's on your calendar, or on the agenda here. February 4th is our, hopefully it will become an annual transportation fair here in Anchorage. It's going to be at the new sports center at the university from 4 to 8 p.m. It was very well attended last year, and it's a great chance to come and see everything that's going on, not just transportation, but also a variety of public works. And so AMATS is going to have a booth there, as well as DOT planning, and then any number of projects. And so encourage people to come. They usually have pretty good eats there too. So, Ms. Hyde?
I was wondering if we could get the schedule of the MTP.
Next time, or do we
Yeah.
throw it off the top of my
No,
head?
no, next time. I mean,
Yeah,
how
sure.
everything's fitting, where is the ad on all the pieces and parts, and overall view of when you guys might
Sure.
estimate it'll be finished. You know, when you might go out for call, it was a model of that. When you go out for a call for projects, when they might be done,
Okay,
all that, the whole big picture.
all right. We can do that.
The Microsoft project calendar.
Does anyone use
Yeah, on
that?
that one. Okay. So next technical advisory committee meeting is February 11th, and then we will see all of us here again on the 18th. Anything else, Craig?
Nope, that's all I got.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned at 2:00. Thank you.